Well, hello and welcome back to the Essentials Club. If you're new around here, I am Maddie, and today we are going to be working on creating a jumpsuit / overall style outfit. I've been trying to think up something perfect to make this retro style floral fabric into, and I think this will suit perfectly because to me I think this silhouette also has that retro style to it, and then it can easily be laid up with shirts, jumpers, beautiful lacy details like this, and then I can go frolic around in fields, have picnics, or just wear it to go get my groceries if I wish. So this jumpsuit has a kind of overalls look to it. It has this button featured at the top where the straps come over and meet the front, and then I've particularly made this one to have this cute front angled piece and then a lower back section, and then it flows down into the pants part where I have added pockets into this. It also features a nice big side split, and obviously when you get to that step you can figure out how big you want your split to be, or if you want one at all. It's a fairly straightforward process of making this. I would say it would probably be good to at least have a couple of projects up your sleeves already so you can have your head around the basics of sewing. Of course, if you feel like you have the confidence, go for it. Just my hot tip before you jump into it. If you want to add something similar to your wardrobe, I'm going to share the steps today of what worked for me, and obviously you can follow along to create your own, and if you want to do that, this is the supplies that you'll need. First up, you will need some fabric. I'll put the recommended amount you'll need per size in the description box of this video. I was actually gifted this material from Spoonflower, and it is their cotton lawn. It is quite on the stiffer side, which I think it just gets away with it. Ideally go for something flowy like your linens and your cottons so it drapes to your body well and is also just comfortable to wear. You'll then also need some matching thread to your material, a measuring tape, some fabric scissors, 2 buttons to go at the top of your jumpsuit, some fabric chalk, something long and thin to help us push the straps out. I just used a clean paintbrush for this. You'll then need some reference pants that we will then trace around to get the pattern for the bottom section of this jumpsuit. We can figure out the type of seam allowance we need to add at those stages, but at the bare minimum, the reference pants should be a nice fit at the crotch that you'd like to replicate. Then lastly, you'll just need some pins and your trusty old sewing machine. Now that you have all of those essentials, it is time to jump into the steps of bringing this baby to life. But before we do that, I want to say a massive thank you to the sponsor of today's video, which is Skillshare. Obviously, if you have watched my videos before, you know I have partnered with them many times, and that is for good reason. If you haven't heard of Skillshare, they're an incredible online resource just waiting for all of you eager learners to join their growing community. Through their platform, you'll find thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people just like yourselves, where you can explore new skills, develop existing interests, and get lost in creativity. I've been a member for over a year now and have dived into subjects like animation, styling, sewing, web design, and so much more. In particular, lately, I have been loving Ekta's lessons on indoor gardening. Her focus on how to utilize a small space and determine what will work best based on your environment was super helpful and made me realize what my existing plants need to thrive and how to plan for new ones. Because let's be real, this plant addiction is turning my unit into a jungle, so I might as well make it a healthy one. If this sounds like you, the first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare, so you can start exploring your creativity today. So make sure that you jump on that offer while it lasts. Righty, let's jump into the steps of making this garment. Because this is going to be a slip style, we need to start off by finding our widest point. For me, that is my butt area. For you, that could definitely be like your hips, your bust, wherever. Find that, and then we will add 4 inches onto this measurement, and that is enough for seam allowance and also just a bit extra to give it that looser fit just in case. So once we've found our widest point, added 4 inches, we are then going to halve that amount, and that is going to be the cutting width of one of our main top panels. To figure out the height of this panel, we'll just measure from our mid chest, or where you would like the top of this jumpsuit to sit, down to where you would like this top section to finish and the pants to join on. For me, I went for about my waist area, or just above my belly button, I think I did. So those are our 2 key cutting measurements for the top panels. Use your measuring tape and your fabric chalk to plot out these measurements on the fabric, and then we'll cut out the first panel, and then you can use this as a template to cut out the second panel. Next, we need to find the angle of the underarm section so that it sculptures well to our body. Again, we'll need to find 2 key measurements on our body. Grab your measuring tape and measure how wide you would like this top section to go across your chest area. I want mine to end up being about 9 inches wide. I'll probably mainly layer this up, so I don't want it to be too wide. Next, we need to figure out how far we would like this to dip down for the underarm section, and of course this will determine how far the back section sits down as well. Find the area in line with where the top of your jumpsuit will ideally finish on your chest. Follow the line of this until you get to your underarm section, and then we'll measure down from that point to where you would like it to sit. So this is where the side 2 edges of the garment will meet. I'm going for quite a lower look, so mine ended up being a 6-inch dip, but if you wanted to say wear this on its own and you want it to cover up your bra, you might want it to be shorter. Obviously it's down to personal preference. So for one of the panels, the one that you would ideally like to be the front one, we're going to fold it in half and measure out half of that chest amount that we found. So if mine was 9 inches, I'm going to mark a place at 4.5 inches. Then from that side edge, we're going to mark down the amount that we measured for the dip under our arm. For me again, that was 6 inches. Between those 2 dot points, we will then just draw a line and cut across this line, and that is going to be our underarm angles for the front top panel. We then just need to cut out a replica piece of this, which will end up being our facing. You could create this out of like a cheaper alternative fabric if you have extra laying around. So when you lay this front panel down, make sure that you have the good sides facing, and then just trim out a second piece that is the mirrored version of that panel. Next, we'll switch our focus to the back panel. So that amount that we measured for the dip of the underarm is what we're going to measure down, but because we're doing a straight lower back, we are not creating the angles on this, and instead we just measure down that amount and then cut straight across there, and the amount that we cut off we can use for the facing. For me that was 6 inches, which I trimmed off. I then actually just put a little mark on the piece that ends up being the good main panel, because it does come in handy down the track to remember which one is the main panel. And then we move on to cutting out the straps. We're going to need to throw the measuring tape over our shoulders and begin from the point pretty much where the jumpsuit will sit on our backside, and then measure over your shoulder to the front point of your mid chest, and then we'll add about 3 inches to this measurement, and that just allows a bit of extra length so it can hang over the front panel, and also just a bit of extra seam allowance as well. Then for the cutting width, you need to determine how wide you want the final strap to be. I'm going for a thicker style, which is about 1.5 inches. You can go for a thinner style. We're then going to double that measurement as we're going to be folding it, and then we're going to add 1 inch for seam allowance. So all up, double your final measurement and add an extra 1 inch of seam allowance. For me that ended up being about 4 inches for my cutting width, so I cut out 2 panels to these measurements, and those are going to be my 2 straps. While we're in the cutting phase of everything, we're going to create some pockets. If you don't want pockets, you can skip this step, but who doesn't want pockets? As this is a self-drafting process, I just use my hand as a reference. So I measured the width of it and added about 2 to 3 inches. That is going to be the height of the straight edge of my pocket, and then from there it kind of goes out in like a semi-bean style. Just try and replicate the shape that you can see on the screen here by going around your hand. Once you've got that first one cut out, you can then use that to create a replica for the second piece. Just make sure that you have the good sides facing, as we want them to be mirrored versions of each other. Then unfold these pieces, and we are going to do the same process where we lay down both of these on the good sides of your extra material and cut out 2 more pieces, making sure again that each of them mirror each other. Then lastly, we're going to cut out the pant panels. This is where you're going to need your reference pants for the shape, but we also need to make sure that the top of the pants are going to match the top panels. So each of my top panels are currently about 21.5 inches wide, so I need the top of my pants to at least meet this. So halve the amount of your top panel and then add 1/2 inch, and that is what we're going to make the top of our pants. So what I did is I marked out this point from the top of my material, and then tried on my pants and measured up to the point where the top panel will sit. For me that was about 2 inches. So when I laid down my pants onto this material, I aligned the center seam of my pants to this mark, as the crotch section will then extend past there. I made sure to offset it by 2 inches and then add at least 1/2 inch of seam allowance as well. From there I just used my fabric chalk and traced around the crotch section and down the full length of the pants. Obviously you would need to figure out how long you want the pants to be. I was happy with the length of these reference pants, so I just kind of followed the trajectory of that and also extended the width of it, as I wanted these to be a wide leg finish. So once you figure out the shape you would like the pants to be, just trace around that and then cut out this first panel, making sure you at least add 1/2 inch to all the side edges, and obviously any extra seam allowance if you want it to be a wider fit compared to the pants that you're referencing. I made sure when I cut out the second piece I laid them good sides facing so they're mirroring versions of each other. Then for my front panels, the crotch is a different shape. I laid down the reference pants again, made sure that the crotch areas both met each other because we want them to at least be a similar position. Continued the same process of measuring that top section so it is at least the width I want it to be, and then following the width of the pants so it is all nice and similar. Cut out that first piece, then replicated that for the second piece, and that means I should have all my panels cut out and ready to start joining together. For this part we're going to focus on joining the top panels and getting them all ready. So I laid down the front top panels good sides facing and then sewed across the top 3 lines, which is the 2 angles and the straight section. If your material is moving around a bit, you can use pins to secure this in place. Also, I may not mention it in every step, but make sure that you do zigzag stitch or at least overlock to help prevent fraying after each step. And then flip that out so the good sides revealed themselves, and pretty much just put that aside until I need it again. For the back panels we end up inserting the straps, so first we're going to focus on preparing the straps. For this we're going to fold them in half so that they are good sides facing, and then sew down one short edge and one long edge. Trim off any excess, and of course if your material frays, zigzag stitch or overlock it. Then grab your clean paintbrush and we're going to push the closed edge out of the open edge. The thicker your straps are, the easier this step is going to be. Then once we've got both of them ready, it is time to insert these into the top panel. I just found my center point of the top and measured out an amount that I thought I would like the straps to be. You'll see that I pinned them in place and then end up adjusting it because it kind of looks a bit too wide. Ideally at the back section you want it to be kind of close together just so your straps don't fall off because they're too wide. Then place the interfacing on top of that with the good sides facing of the main material, pin that in place and then just sew across that top section. And in the process you will be securing these straps in place. Then I just created an understitch which helps secure the seam allowance onto the facing side. This helps stitch it down and prevents it from puffing up. So how I do that is I flatten out the two pieces and then just push the seam allowance over to the facing side and sew one single line that secures this seam allowance down onto the facing. If you find that the other top panel is puffing up as well and kind of moving around, you can use the same method to help secure it down to the facing. Next we're going to prepare the bottoms then to add onto the top section. So we will lay the matching pieces good sides facing and then we're just going to pin and sew across this crotch section. Once you've done that for the first pair, then repeat that for the second, and then it is time to add these onto the top. So normally the crotches are different for the front and back. I find that the back one is quite bigger than the front, so find which one is related to which top panel, and then we'll lay the pants of that good side facing up and then lay down the top good side facing down. Once you've got that centered all aligned, pin it in place and then just sew a single line across there. I repeated the same process for the front. Again, just a reminder, this might be a good point to zigzag stitch or overlock to make sure it's all nice and clean. I found before moving forward with this next step it was a good time to measure the width of the whole garment at this current time, just to make sure that it is aligning with that measurement that we initially cut them out to be. So for me that was 21.5 inches, and that is going to be wide enough so it slips over my widest point, because when we add these pockets in it's quite hard to then change the width of this garment. Measure down how far you would like the pockets to be. I probably could have brought mine up a little bit. I measured down 10 inches, but I think if I was to do it again I would probably do it at 8 inches. So measure down, replicate this on the other side and lay down your pockets so the straight edges are matching and the good sides of the material are facing each other. We're just going to sew one line down this area and do the same understitch. Probably saying it wrong, but I'm just going to keep calling it understitch. And we do that by pushing that seam allowance over towards the pocket side and sewing one line so it helps secure it down in place, and again prevents it from puffing up and the pocket kind of pushing out, which we don't want it to do. Once we've done that for the first side, you'll see it kind of looks like some weird alien shape with these like side lungs coming out of it. And then I just laid on the other panel and made sure that the good sides are facing up so I can easily add the pockets on at this stage, and then just place the pockets in line where the matching pockets will sit. Pinned that in place, sewed one line down there, and then repeated the process of the understitch. Then it is up to joining the front and back panels and the pockets at the same time. So I laid the front and back panels good sides facing, pinned all the way down the sides, making sure to pin the pockets, and also I measured out how far I wanted my split to come up. I do want it to be quite dramatic, so I think I went about 12 inches. Obviously you can go smaller if you want it to just be a little split, or you can just sew completely to the bottom if you don't want to split at all, which is totally fine. I popped in that key pin, and then essentially what we're going to do is sew down from the top where they meet to the top of the pocket, turn that corner, go around to the pocket, turn that corner again, and then continue down. And we need to make sure that we don't sew close this pocket. Obviously we want our hands to go in, so we leave that entrance of the pocket open. So do that for the first side, then repeat it for the second side, and then we're going to focus on the center seams of the pants. Align the crotch and then continue pinning down from there. I find as well, just to keep it nice and aligned, I start to sew from the center down one side and then go back to the center and sew down that side. Just a method that seems to work for me. At this point you're going to start seeing a recognizable jumpsuit, which is really exciting. Next we're going to switch our focus onto preparing the buttonholes and attaching the button. This would be a good time to pop on the jumpsuit and just try it on and then pin in the placement that you would like the straps to be. If you're unsure, remember you can always add 2 buttonholes so that you have like a longer version and a tighter version. I wanted my straps to go over the top of the front panel, so that means that my buttons will be sitting on the top panel and the buttonholes will be on the strap. So once I'd figured out roughly where the button will sit, I mapped out the height of the button, drew a line across there, and that is going to help me indicate where the buttonhole will sit. I then switched my machine to a zigzag setting and did a larger width stitch above and below, and then a smaller width on either side. Of course, if you have a buttonhole and a button foot setting, obviously go ahead and use that. I'm just showing this just in case you don't, and then you should end up with something looking like this. Then you can use your scissors or your unpicker and open up the inside of that buttonhole. Then you can double check that it fits, and that is your first buttonhole done. You'll then just need to repeat that process for the second button, and then that is looking all good. For attaching the actual button, we're just going to place the straps over the top of where we would roughly like the button to sit. Grab our fabric chalk or our pencil and reach through the buttonhole and pop a placement of where we would like the button to sit. We'll then remove the strap, and then we can thread a hand needle, tie a few knots, leaving a little tail at the end of the thread. Begin hand sewing from underneath where this point is, pop the button onto the thread, continue back through one of the buttonholes, through the fabric to the underside, and just keep repeating this process until you feel like the button is on there nice and secure. Then you can finish at the underside, trim the needle off, making sure that you leave a little bit of a tail, and then you can tie a few knots, and that will mean you have a button all ready to go. You'll then just need to repeat that process for the second button. Now this step is optional, but if you try it on and you do find that it is bulging around those angled edges, we can create some darts to help shape it better to our body. So what we do is obviously focus on those 2 side edges, and we're just going to fold it in half along there so the good sides are facing. Make sure to remove the rest of the garment from underneath so that we are just focusing on this new folded edge. If you're unsure of how much you need to take in, maybe when you're trying it on you could squeeze in around this area to help you indicate how big you should make the dart. As a reference, I'd say on the smaller side you probably want to make it 1/4 to 1/2 inch, and on the larger side probably 3/4 to a max of 1 full inch. Once you'd figured that out, grab our measuring tape and measure from the folded edge the amount that you want to create this dart. I went for 1 inch, and then I measured down about 4 inches, just because I think if you make it any longer it will start intruding too much onto the garment. So about 4 inches for the max, and again you can probably go a little bit shorter if you do end up creating a smaller dart. I then drew a line between these 2 dot points, and that was going to be my sewing line. I then just pop some pins in place around this area to help secure it in place, making sure that it doesn't shuffle around as I am sewing. Then I made sure that the 2 side edges were aligning, started at that 1 inch point and sewed down to the corner. Just a little side tip, I always try and like kind of taper off towards the end just so it doesn't create too much of a drastic pointed finish. And then once you've done that first one, you can repeat it for the second. When it comes to the final finishing of the garment and you're ironing it all, just make sure you press this area and that will help flatten it. If for some reason these tabs created by the darts are annoying you, you can always trim them down, but I don't know, I find it always ends up being fine to leave there. Again, personal preference and figuring out what you would prefer. So for this final step, we just need to do one last try on, make sure that it is to the length we would like it to be, or at least we know how much we need to hem to get it to the length we want to be. Then we're just going to create a double folded hem across that bottom edge and up those side splits. Use your pins to secure this in place, or if you do have a material that is quite puffy or flimsy, you can iron this and it will help immensely at keeping it in place while you sew. Then just start sewing along the bottom edge, turn the corner and go up with a side split, turn the corner again and go across the split, and then turn the corner again and go down the split, and then you should end up roughly where you began, so then you can do a back stitch and you are all done. Repeat that for the second leg, and my friends, you have a new garment to add to your wardrobe. Just make sure to go around and trim off any excess seam that you have on the insides, make any adjustments if need be, and then just go around and overlock or zigzag stitch any raw edges that you think might fray. Because we have gone for a slip style with this jumpsuit, it is a little bit boxier, so if you prefer more of like a fitted style outfit, you can always add a belt to the waist area, or if you're feeling a bit spicy and want a permanent gathered waist, you could always add an elastic waistband. There's always ways around of making this suit your style and your body shape better. Well, I hope you enjoyed the process of watching this piece of fabric turn into a wearable garment. I've had this number on my to-do list for a while now, and I'm so glad that I can finally add it into my wardrobe and style it up for my many occasions that I'm going to wear it to. If you enjoyed watching this, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and also subscribe subscribe as I've got plenty more videos like this in the works. Also, if you did give this a go, I would love to see how it turned out. Tag me at the Essentials Club on Instagram or wherever you share your outcomes. Also, don't forget to make the most of that Skillshare offer while it lasts. I hope you have a lovely day wherever you guys are, and I'll see you in the upcoming videos.